Hi everyone. Tonight we're going to travel back in time to a place that's cold. Not like grab a sweater cold, but if you stop moving, you die cold. You're standing outside your home, and already you can't feel your nose. It's only mid-November, but the wind bites like it's been sharpening its teeth all year just for this. Your cottage is made of wattle and daub, which is medieval speak for twigs and mud. The gaps in the wall whistle with wind, and your thatched roof leaks when snow melts, which, spoiler alert, isn't often. You're wearing wool if you're lucky, but it's scratchy damp and smells like a wet dog that's lost its will to live. You own one pair of shoes, more holes than leather, and when you step, they make a sad little squish from yesterday's slush. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, drop your current location and local time in the comments. I want to know what century and what temperature you're listening from. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started on tonight's journey together. You shuffle inside. The hearth is cold, and you haven't had firewood in 2 days. The logs ran out fast because there was no forest left near your village. Trees were either chopped down centuries ago or owned by the Lord who doesn't take kindly to peasants borrowing firewood. You could be hanged for that or just beaten, which is basically a discount execution. Your breath floats in front of your face as you look around. Your family is bundled under thin blankets, 3 generations, sharing one straw bed where lice play tag in the linens. Outside, frost patterns dance across the small pane of glass if you're lucky enough to own one. Most cottages have no windows. Why let in the light when it just brings in more cold? You remember last year, old Bernard froze to death in the middle of the night. Just drifted off and never woke up. His wife cried for hours, then tried to barter his shoes for oats. No one bought them. Too small. Too stiff. The cold isn't just a discomfort. It's a constant companion. Your fingers hurt. Your knees ache. Your nose bleeds. And yet the real pain isn't outside, it's in your gut. Because the food storage from harvest season already dwindling. More on that soon, but for now, you're just trying to fall asleep. The fire crackles softly with the last twig you dared to burn. You try to pull the blanket tighter, but your cousin already stole most of it. You whisper a prayer not for warmth, but to make it to morning. Outside, snow begins to fall, slow, silent, and without mercy. You dream of summer, but even in dreams, you still feel the cold. Morning comes not with sunlight, but with a dull gray haze, and the scratching sound of your father trying to unstick the door frozen shut again. You don't want to move. Not just because you're warm, relatively speaking, under the shared blanket, but because moving means facing the reality there's no food. Not no food, as in nothing you want to eat. No food as in the pantry's empty. The grain sacks are bare, and the last root vegetable shriveled into something that looks like a cursed toe. You check the cellar, what once was a stash of preserved cabbage, turnips, and salted meat now smells of mold and disappointment. One barrel of rye has grown fur, the other empty. A rat probably got to it, or maybe your little brother did and blamed the rat. Either way, it's gone. This is not a one-time problem. This is the cycle. Harvest comes, you store what you can, and by midwinter, it's all either eaten, spoiled, or stolen. There's no refrigeration, just hope, prayer, and a hole in the ground. You bake dark, rock-hard bread that could double as a weapon and chew it slowly because it's the only thing keeping your jaw from freezing shut. If you're lucky, and that's a big if, someone in the village caught a rabbit. Not to share, of course, but you hear about it. Word spreads fast when meat enters the picture. You imagine the sizzling sound even though you've never actually heard it in person. Your meals haven't involved sizzling, they've involved scraping. At this point, hunger has stopped being a pang and started being a personality. You forget what it feels like to be full. You think about food all the time. Some nights you even dream of butter. Not in a bowl, just the concept of it. Smooth, yellow, sinful butter. Your mother tries to ration the oats. Half a handful per person per day. Mixed with melted snow and a pinch of salt if any salt remains. It tastes like sadness. Meanwhile, the nobility throws feasts inside their stone halls, oblivious or indifferent to your village's slow descent into collective starvation. Historians still debate whether some lords actually cared about their serfs, or just saw them as human tax units. Either way, you're not getting an invite to dinner. You start considering things that were unthinkable a month ago. Bark, for instance. Stripped off trees, boiled, chewed until your jaw cramps. Not food technically, but in winter the definition gets blurry. Same goes for straw mixed with flour or boiled moss. If you're desperate enough, you'll eat it. And trust me, you're desperate enough. You remember hearing about the Great Famine of 1315. The one where people ate cats, and worse. Back then it rained too much, crops failed for 3 straight years, and winter swallowed the continent like a hungry ghost. Europe's stomach, they called it. Bottomless and full of rot. You didn't live through that one, but sometimes it feels like it never really ended. Even now, someone coughs behind you. Not a small cough, a winter cough. Chest deep. That kind of cough means someone's not going to make it to February. Your stomach growls so loud it startles the cat. Yes, you still have a cat. Because oddly enough, nobody wants to eat it. Yet, you chew the last piece of rye. It takes a full minute. You savor every miserable bite. Then you lean back, belly still hollow, and wonder how you'll survive until spring. Spoiler alert, statistically, you probably won't. You wake up in the dark. Not because it's early, but because the sun barely shows its face this time of year. And even when it does, it's just a pale disk, more of a suggestion than a source of warmth. Your feet hit the frozen dirt floor, and pain shoots up your legs. The cold isn't just in the air, it's in your bones, in your lungs, under your fingernails. You cough. Your breath fogs in front of you like smoke. The bucket of water by the door, frozen solid, again. You chip away at it with a knife until you get a slush that's somehow colder than the ice itself. Your joints ache. Your fingers can't bend properly. You try to stretch, but it's like pulling on brittle rope. And still there's work to do, always work. That's the thing about medieval life, no snow days. No breaks for self-care. No, I'm staying inside because it's cold. You step outside and your face immediately goes numb. Your eyelashes freeze together. Your nose starts to drip and then freezes mid-drip. You trudge toward the fields not to plant. Of course, that's impossible. You're just clearing snow off the hay bales so they don't rot entirely. Your gloves are made of wool scraps. They're wet. They've been wet for weeks. Your hands feel like glass. You imagine them shattering if you knock them together too hard. Someone down the road shouts. You turn and see a figure collapsed in the snow. Probably old Tom. He's been walking to the chapel every day since his wife died. Didn't make it this time. You don't go to help because what are you going to do? He's gone. You say a prayer under your breath and keep walking. The cold doesn't just make life miserable, it makes it short. Babies born in winter rarely survive their first month. Old folks don't stand a chance. And if you're young, strong, and unlucky, you freeze to death doing chores. It happens. Last winter, a boy from the next village tried to chop wood alone. Collapsed in the woods, fingers blue axe still in hand. Fire is life. But getting firewood is a gamble. Most of the forest belongs to the Lord, and poaching wood, yes, that's a real thing, can land you in the stocks. Or worse. One guy lost a hand for firewood. So what do? You burn anything that'll catch. Dried dung, old rags. Your neighbor once burned half a chair. The joke was that he only had one anyway. You laughed. Then you asked to borrow the rest, and that's assuming you have a hearth. Many cottages don't. Just a pit in the middle of the floor, smoke curling into the thatch above, blackening the beams until they're flammable themselves. More than one family has gone to bed warm and never woken up the fire creeping through the roof like a silent beast. Historians still debate whether medieval homes had proper ventilation or whether everyone just lived in a smoky death trap and called it ambiance. Tonight, your cousin is shivering so hard the bed shakes. You press up against him not for love, but for survival. Your feet touch his. They're like ice. You both try to sleep. You fail. Instead, you stare at the ceiling and think of warmth, not just physical heat, but the feeling of safety, of fullness, of being alive without struggling. Then you wonder if you'll ever feel it again. The cold creeps into your ears. You stop feeling your toes. You hope it's just numbness. You pray it's not the beginning of the end. You hear laughter echoing down the hill. Not from your village, no one here has the energy for that. It's coming from the manor house. You glance up through the sleet and spot its shape, tall, smug, and made of actual stone. Real windows, real chimneys, and warmth that doesn't need rationing. Inside, the noble family is throwing a winter feast. Roast meats, mulled wine, fresh bread, yes, fresh. You can almost taste it through the hunger-induced hallucination that started coloring your vision. Someone's playing a lute. A dog by the fire wears a little embroidered coat. That dog probably eats better than you. You pull your hood tighter. It's more of a rag really patched too many times to count. Your shoes squelch in the snow. The left one has a hole in the toe big enough to wave through. You've wrapped it with twine, but it just keeps fraying. There's a sharp contrast between the manor and your hovel. They have tiled floors. You have frozen dirt. They have tapestries on the walls. You have wind in the walls. They dine in long halls lit by candlelight and flaming sconces. You eat in silence under a ceiling stained with centuries of soot. And here's the worst part. You're technically protected by these people. The Lord owns the land, yes. But in exchange for your loyalty and labor, he's supposed to defend you from famine invaders and wolves. Emphasis on supposed to. You remember last winter's snowfall so deep, it buried the paths entirely. A child from the village went missing. You searched all night. The Lord never sent help. His steward said it wasn't the manor's concern. The child's body turned up in a frozen ditch 2 weeks later. Historians still debate whether feudalism was a mutual contract or just organized exploitation. You've got a strong opinion. As you pass the manor's gate, you pause. Just for a second. The warmth coming from inside leaks through the stone walls like a cruel reminder. You imagine slipping inside just to feel the heat, to sneak a bite of pork, or lick the dripping fat off a trencher. But you'd be caught, beaten, maybe thrown into the snow and left there. Again, not metaphorically, actually left there. You trudge back home, slipping once on an icy rut. You hit your knee. It bruises instantly. You don't cry. You don't have the spare water in your body for tears. At home, your father's trying to stretch the last of the lard. It's rancid, but still calories. Your sister tries to scrape off the mold. You stare into the hearth. The fire's barely alive, just red coals blinking in the ash. You wonder how it must feel to sit by a real fire. The kind that makes you drowsy, not desperate. There's a knock at the door. It's the reeve sent by the manor. He wants the winter tax. Yes, a tax. On what you don't know. Misery, maybe. He leaves with a chicken. You're only one. It didn't lay any more, but it was company. You watch it disappear down the path, its feet leaving tiny tracks in the snow. Soon they'll be covered. The manor's bells ring out. Another song, another toast. You curl up on your bed of straw and whisper to no one, I hope they choke. You don't mean it. Well, maybe a little. You wake to the sound of scuttling. Not footsteps, claws, little ones. Under the bed, in the walls, across the beams. Rats. They're bold in winter, bolder than you. Hungrier too, if that's possible. You sit up quickly and catch one mid-scamper across the hearth. It pauses, stares at you like it owns the place, then disappears into a hole by the fire. You throw a spoon at it. Miss. Obviously. You used to be disgusted by them. Now you're just competing. The food scraps are long gone, but that doesn't stop the rats. They gnaw through sacks, chew at leather, even nibble on soap. If you fall asleep with bread in your pocket, bread, they'll crawl right over you to get it. One time a boy in the next cottage over lost a fingertip. Swear it was while he slept. That's what they told you anyway. Historians still debate whether medieval rat bites were frequent or just exaggerated in folk tales. Either way, you're not taking chances. The church says rats are God's punishment, a test. Others say they're a plague in fur coats, and they're not wrong. You remember the old woman down the road. Her son got sick last winter. Boils, fever, blackened skin. The priest blamed a curse. You blamed the rats. Everyone did, because you saw them, crawling over his blanket, licking the blood from the sheets. He was buried before the ground thawed. No one touches that cottage now. You grab a stick and poke around the corners of your home, jabbing at the gaps in the walls. One rat squeaks and darts out. Your sister screams, you all scream, then you all laugh, and it's that kind of laugh. The we're going to die, might as well cackle kind. There's no pest control, no traps. Just cats if you're lucky, and stones if you're fast. You've become weirdly good at throwing things. You plug the holes with old cloth and straw, knowing full well they'll chew through it by nightfall. They always do. Your grandfather says there are more rats than people now. He's probably not wrong. Outside, the snow's piled high against the barn. You step into it and nearly vanish to the knees. That's where the rats are worst barns. They nest in the hay and the feed bins and the guts of the ox that died last week and hasn't yet been dragged out. You hold your breath when you go in. Not because of the smell, because of what might run over your foot. You check your boots, still intact. No chew holes. That's a small miracle. A few years ago, someone's boots were eaten while he slept. He didn't wake up until morning. Had to walk barefoot to the manor. Lost 3 toes to frostbite. But he still paid his tithe. At this point, You're not even sure what you fear more, the cold or the things that live in it. You used to think monsters hid in the dark. Now you know better. Monsters don't hide. They scratch, they bite, and they squeal just loud enough to haunt your dreams. As night falls, you light a candle and place it by the bed. Not for comfort, to see their eyes glint when they come. You sleep with a stick now. Everyone does. And if you dream, it's of a place without scratching sounds, without bites, without the constant feeling that something small and vile is waiting just under the floor for you to stop moving. It's 4 p.m, and it might as well be midnight. You're outside walking home from hauling water, 2 sloshing wooden buckets that froze around the rim before you even got halfway back. The sky is a smear of blue-gray, the kind that feels like it's pressing down on your head. There's no sun. There hasn't been for days. Just this suffocating dimness that makes time meaningless. Back in summer, the days stretched long and golden. You could work, rest, maybe even smile. Now it's just darkness and the slow, inevitable decline into bone-deep weariness. You've lit every candle you own, too, and they don't make a dent. They just sputter and spit, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the walls. Inside, the dark plays tricks on you. You see movement where there is none. Hear sounds that vanish when you lean closer. The fire is too weak to do anything but mock you, so you wrap a woolen cloth around your head like a shroud and wait for sleep. But sleep doesn't come easily. Because the dark isn't just outside, it's inside you now. It gets into your chest, sits behind your eyes, makes everything feel slow and heavy, like even your thoughts have frost on them, and everyone's mood. Let's just say this is not the season of joy. Your father snapped this morning because someone tracked snow into the house. Your mother wept quietly for half an hour because the bread didn't rise. It never does, but today it broke her. Your brother hasn't spoken in 2 days. He just stares into the embers like he's watching his own soul burn out. Historians still debate whether winter depression existed as a clinical phenomenon back then, but anyone who lived through it didn't need a Latin term for it. You felt it in your blood, in your breath, in the way your body forgot how to hope. In the dark, the village grows quieter. Sounds disappear. The smithy is silent. The laughter of children gone. Even the dogs don't bark anymore. You hear the occasional creak, the shuffle of someone passing your door, the wind whispering something you'd rather not understand. And with the dark comes fear, because this is when the old stories crawl back into your head. The ones about witches in the woods, beasts in the snow, spirits that drift into homes through cracks in the stone and whisper names in your sleep. You tell yourself they're just stories, but deep down with the wind howling and the shadows stretching, you're not so sure. Your grandmother says this is the time when the veil is thinnest, when the dead walk, when the devil moves through villages in the shape of a beggar knocking on doors. You laughed when you were little. You don't laugh now. Tonight, the dark comes early and stays heavy. You light your candles and say your prayers not because you believe they'll help, but because doing something feels better than doing nothing. You tuck the blanket tighter around your shoulders. Outside, the wind howls like it's lost something. Inside, you close your eyes and count backward from 100, not to fall asleep, but to keep from screaming. Somewhere in the night, a bell rings. Just once. You don't know why. You don't ask. You're thirsty, again, which feels ridiculous considering how much snow is outside. But here's the thing they don't tell you about medieval winters having water all around you doesn't mean you have water. You shuffle out into the morning chill, shoulders hunched, hands buried under too thin cloth. You've got a bucket in one hand and a small axe in the other. The well is your destination. It always is. Except today, like most days lately, it's frozen solid. You start chipping at the ice with the axe. It's slow, miserable. Dangerous too. Last week, a neighbor slipped on the well stones and broke his leg. He's been inside ever since, feverish, smelling worse each day. There's a joke that he won't last longer than the next thaw. No one laughs. Once you've cracked the top layer, you lower your bucket into the dark hole, praying it doesn't freeze again before you get back. The rope creaks. The pulley groans. Finally, you haul up a half bucket of slush, barely enough for drinking, let alone washing. It's gray. Bits of dirt float in it, but it's wet. You call that a win. You walk carefully back, arms aching. By the time you make it to your door, half the water has spilled, and the other half is starting to freeze around the rim. You set it down by the fire, which is really just a memory of fire, and hope it'll melt enough to drink. Water barrels inside the house also frozen. You tried moving one closer to the hearth once, but it cracked from the heat and leaked everything. So now you're back to buckets and luck. You remember hearing that the Romans had heated baths, indoor plumbing, even warm floors. Historians still debate how widespread those luxuries were. But you'd give your left boot to experience just 5 minutes of it. Bathing is a rare event. Maybe once a month. Less in winter. You heat water when you can, but it takes ages and burns too much fuel. So instead, you wipe yourself with a damp cloth and call it clean. You smell like smoke and old wool. Everyone does. It's the scent of survival. Your mother mutters about spirits living in stagnant water. She throws in herbs when she can, rosemary if you're lucky, but mostly it's melted snow or slushy well water. You try not to think about what else is in it. Last year, someone found a drowned rat in the barrel. You drank that water for 2 weeks before anyone noticed. You think about the stream that runs near the edge of the forest. It's cleaner, maybe, but it's far, and wolves have been sighted. Plus, the last boy who went didn't come back until after dark, face, pale arms, scratched, shaking. He never said what he saw. He just won't go near the trees anymore. You sip from a cup. Your teeth ache from the cold. The water tastes like iron and ash, and yet it's one of the best parts of your day, because it means for the moment, you're still alive. The bells ring faintly through the snow, a dull, distant clang that echoes across the frozen rooftops like a memory. You know what they mean. Church service. You don't really want to go. No one does. It's cold, the snow is deep, and your boots are soaked from yesterday. But you don't skip Mass. Not in winter. Not when the parish priest holds more power than a sword ever could. You bundle up, if that's what you can call it. A second tunic, your least holy scarf, and that lopsided wool hood your grandmother knitted before her hands stopped working. You trudge through the village, following the same path everyone else takes, boots crunching in snow, breath rising in soft puffs like smoke signals for God. The church is at the village edge, made of stone and somehow colder inside than out. You step through the arched doorway and immediately the chill wraps around you like a wet sheet. The pews are hard. The air smells of wax, damp wood, and incense so thick it makes your head spin. The priest is already mid-chant. You shuffle into place with the others, heads bowed, not in reverence but in exhaustion. You close your eyes and pray not for salvation, but for spring, for food, for warmth. for one single morning where your nose doesn't hurt. He speaks of suffering, of how Christ endured the cold, the hunger, the pain, how you must do the same to earn your place in heaven. You'd question it if you weren't so tired. But faith in winter isn't always belief, it's ritual. Something to do, something to hold on to when everything else is crumbling. You glance at the window. Frost flowers bloom on the glass, curling like ghostly vines. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The Mass ends, but you don't leave right away. Because even though the church is freezing, it's at least a place where you can sit and pretend just for a second that you're not alone. People stay longer in winter. They whisper to one another, share news, stories, rumors. You overhear a merchant say the roads are impassable. Another mentions a neighboring village hit by sickness. Someone else quietly says they heard the dead have been seen walking again, then laughs. Not because it's funny, but because fear tastes better when it's shared. Historians still debate how central the church was to daily medieval survival, whether it truly provided hope or simply held power by controlling guilt. You don't have the luxury of caring. The church means bread rations, a bit of news, maybe even charity, if the priest is in a generous mood. Sometimes he is, sometimes he's not. Today he gives a few crusts of bread to the widow near the door. You watch her hands tremble as she takes them. You envy her. Not for the food, but because she had the nerve to ask. Outside, you brace yourself for the wind. The snow has drifted again. You push forward, squinting against the sting. You step into a footprint, someone else's, and try to make your own path a little easier. Behind you, the church bells ring again, just once, like a reminder. God is watching. You can't feel your toes. You've been standing still too long, waiting for your father to finish arguing with a neighbor over a borrowed shovel. Yes, a shovel. And the cold has crept into your boots, into your socks, into your bones. You stomp your feet, trying to wake them back up. But all you get is pins and needles, followed by a deep, aching numbness. That's the winter's way of warning you move or else. Back inside, your mother wraps your feet in cloth soaked with something herbal. Smells sharp rosemary, maybe mint, something bitter and green. She mutters an old rhyme under her breath, while she works something she learned from her grandmother, who learned it from a wandering midwife who supposedly healed frostbite with just a chant and warm goose grease. You want to laugh, but you don't. Not in front of her. Because when medicine fails, and let's be honest, it usually does, superstition is the next best thing. You've got charms above the door to keep away illness. Salt lines under the window to trap spirits. Your uncle buried a silver coin under the threshold last spring to keep the cold from entering, which didn't work, but no one's brave enough to dig it up. You rub your hands together, trying to coax some life back into them. The skin cracks when you flex your fingers. Little red fissures that sting every time they touch anything. You try not to complain. Your cousin lost a thumb 2 winters ago to frostbite. Just turned black one day and fell off like a rotten leaf. They kept it in a box for a while. No one knows why. The local healer, a woman who lives near the woods and smells permanently of mushrooms, swears by hot stones and boiled fox fat. You tried it once. It didn't help, just made the house smell like burnt fur for 3 days. Still, you do what she says. Everyone does, because the alternative is doing nothing. And if you do nothing, you die. Historians still debate whether folk magic was genuine belief or just desperate habit. But here's what you know when your feet are blue and your breath comes out in wheezes. You'll whisper any charm, drink any potion, say any prayer. Your sister ties a red ribbon around her wrist every winter. Says it keeps her fingers warm. It doesn't. but she swears it helps. Maybe that's enough. You remember hearing stories about people in the far north, how they sleep wrapped in seal skins, how they build homes from snow itself, how they like the cold. You're not sure if those people exist, but you'd like to meet one and ask them what it feels like to walk outside and not feel afraid of the air. Tonight, you sit by the hearth with your feet near the embers and your fingers curled around a chipped mug of something hot. Not wine, those days are long gone, but hot water steeped with stale herbs. It smells like wet leaves and tastes like sadness. But it's warm, and that makes it magic. It's Yuletide, at least that's what the priest says. The calendar says it's a holy day, a season of joy and giving and light in the darkest part of the year. But let's be real, you don't feel especially joyful. You don't have anything left to give. And the only light is from a single half-burnt candle sputtering in a drafty window. You were hoping for celebration, singing, feasting warmth. Instead, it's fasting. The church has declared another lean Holy Week, and meat is off the table, as if it was ever on the table. So you get turnips. Again. Maybe if your family is lucky, a bowl of boiled oats sweetened with a single dried plum. A plum so shriveled it looks like it holds ancient secrets. Your little brother tries to split it evenly between 5 bowls. It ends up in his own. Outside, the snow falls slow and steady, blanketing the village like a white silence. People walk carefully. No one jokes. Even the children's play has quieted, too cold for snowballs, too hungry for mischief. There's a Yule log in the hearth, yes, but it's not the grand bark-covered beast you imagined. It's half a broken fence post wrapped in twine. Your father carved a symbol into it, muttering old words he doesn't teach you. Something pre-Christian, maybe. Something from the older times. He said it kept evil spirits from entering during the long night. You don't argue. You just toss on another pine cone and hope it crackles. Later that evening, there's a gathering in the church square. Everyone brings what they can, a dried sprig of holly, a crust of bread, a carved figurine. The priest reads from a sacred book in Latin. You understand maybe 4 words. You stand there, teeth chattering, trying not to look at the woman next to you, who just buried her child last week. The child's name was Ellen, 3 years old, didn't survive the last frost. Historians still debate whether medieval people actually celebrated Christmas the way we imagine with joy and song, or whether it was just another holy day filled with obligations and rules. In your world, it's both joy is a ritual now, not a feeling. At some point, a man begins to sing. His voice is cracked, ragged, but strong enough to stir the crowd. You don't know the words, but you hum along. Everyone does. Because singing, even bad singing, is louder than hunger. There's a tradition your family follows, leaving food out for the spirits. Not much, just a crust of bread smeared with lard left on the windowsill. You don't really believe spirits eat bread, but it's a show of respect, or maybe an apology, for surviving when others haven't. Before bed, your mother gives you a gift, a single glove, not a pair, just one. It's made from scraps of cloth stitched together with twine, lumpy and uneven. You put it on, and it's already warmer than anything you've owned this year. You say thank you. You don't cry. The wind howls outside trying to get in. The candle gutters. The fire dims. You crawl into bed beside your siblings, blanket pulled to your chin glove still on. Merry Christmas. You whisper it to no one. You hear them before you see them. A low, mournful howl rolling over the snow, bouncing between cottages. and echoing through the bare trees like a warning. The sound curls in your spine. Your blood knows what's coming before your brain does. Wolves, you hurry to bolt the door such as it is. Just a plank of wood on a leather hinge. You wedge a stool under the handle and press your shoulder against it, even though you know a hungry pack wouldn't have much trouble breaking through if they really wanted to. You're not sure if they do. Not yet. But that sound they're close. It's not the first time. Last winter, 3 sheep disappeared overnight. One turned up half-eaten in a ditch. The others never showed up. A few months ago, they took a duck, then a goat, then someone's grandfather. People still whisper about it, though officially it was just a tragic fall in the woods. You're not convinced. See when food runs out in the forest. Predators follow the smell of the village. It's all meat to them. Sheep, chickens, dogs, people. Especially the weak ones. Especially the children. You move away from the door and glance at the window. Nothing but swirling snow and dark shapes in the trees. You tell yourself they're just bushes, just shadows, but you know better. The wolf stories are ancient. The old ones say wolves are devils in disguise, cursed men who crawl on all fours by moonlight. Others say they're spirits of the condemned come back to finish their revenge. But tonight they're just hungry. Like you. Only stronger. Faster. And not as cold. The fire crackles. Your brother sharpens a stick. You're not even sure it'll help. Wolves aren't afraid of sticks anymore. Historians still debate how often wolf attacks happened in the Middle Ages. But you don't care what the scholars think. You've seen what's left of a cow after a midnight visit. It wasn't academic. Your neighbor, old Rannoch, claims he killed a wolf with a shovel 2 winters ago. You doubt it. Rannoch can barely kill time, but he keeps that shovel by his bed now like it's a sword. So maybe he believes it. There's movement outside. You freeze. A shape moves between the trees, slow and low, like it's deciding something. Then another. Then 3. The livestock are penned, but the latch isn't strong. You told your father to fix it. He said he would. Eventually. You whisper a curse into your scarf and grab your boots. Outside, your breath fogs instantly. You sprint through the drifts, boots, slipping lungs, burning, praying the animals are still there. They are. So are the wolves. 2 of them lean and gray eyes like coals circling the fence. One growls low. You raise your arms and yell, trying to sound bigger, meaner, braver than you are. It works, kind of. They back off just enough for you to throw a rock. You miss. But they get the message. For now. You reinforce the pen with rope and a prayer, then sprint back inside, shaking soaked heart, doing its best impression of a war drum. You don't sleep that night. You listen to the howling, to the scratching, to the silence that's almost worse. Eventually the sun rises, weak, pale, afraid maybe just like you. The wolves are gone, but they'll be back. So you keep the fire going, and the shovel close. You huddle near the hearth, watching the fire, as if it were an animal, temperamental, unpredictable, always on the edge of dying or escaping. Getting a fire started in winter is no small feat. Keeping it going, that's a full-time job. You remember this morning clearly. Your father knelt over the ashes for nearly an hour, blowing gently, coaxing sparks like they were secrets. He used dry straw and a bit of fat-soaked cloth, precious supplies. It took 3 tries. The second attempt set the edge of his tunic on fire. You beat it out with a cooking spoon. Now the fire burns, but just barely. A few glowing coals, a snapped branch, a handful of dry dung. It smokes more than it flames, and it stings your eyes until they water. There's no chimney in your house. Most peasants' homes don't have them. Instead, the smoke escapes through a hole in the roof, or doesn't. Sometimes it just hangs there low and lazy, making every breath feel like you're trying to inhale through a pile of old wool. You cough constantly. Everyone does. Your little brother's developed a wheeze that doesn't go away even when the fire's out. Historians still debate how widespread chimney use was before the 14th century. All you know is that your lungs are learning how to live in fog. The fire is sacred. Without it, you freeze. With it, you risk burning down your house. It's a constant game of balance. You can't leave it alone for too long, it dies. You feed it too much, it flares up. And if it escapes, catches on the thatch roof, the whole village could vanish in one smoky night. You know of 2 families who lost everything to fire. Not in battle, not in storm, just in sleep. One spark and then silence. The priest says they're at peace now. You're not so sure. Firewood is another issue. Trees are scarce near the village. Most of the nearby forest belongs to the manor. Technically, you're allowed to collect deadfall branches already on the ground. But good luck finding any. And if the Lord's men catch you breaking branches or cutting down even a sapling, it's a crime. A crime to not freeze. You once saw a man dragged through the village square tied to a horse cart for stealing kindling from the wrong woods. His fingers were black with frostbite. They didn't even untie his hands when they whipped him. So you get creative. You burn animal dung. You burn straw. You burn old baskets, broken stools, tools with snapped handles. Once you burned a book. You don't know what it was about. You can't read. But it burned hot and fast. And in that moment, that was worth more than words. At night, the fire becomes your guardian. Everyone sleeps near it. You rotate in shifts. One person stokes it while the others sleep. If it dies, you wake up to ice on your blanket. Your sister whispers stories as she sits by it. Tales of will-o'-the-wisps and fire spirits, and how long ago people could talk to flames and get answers. You know it's just a story, but still you whisper a thank you to the fire sometimes when no one's listening. You don't believe it hears you, but what if it does? You press your hands near the flame just close enough to sting. For a moment you're warm, and that's enough. The graveyard never freezes quite enough. You'd think with the earth this hard, and the air like knives digging would stop. But it doesn't. People keep dying, and someone always has to bury them. This morning the bell rang twice. That's the code for a child. You didn't know him well. He was small, always wrapped in too many layers, never seemed to speak above a whisper. His mother wailed through the night. You heard it through the wall. Thin walls let through everything in winter wind, cold grief. They'll bury him today if they can break the ground. That's the challenge. The soil is like iron, frozen stiff. You once saw the grave diggers pour boiling water onto it just to soften a patch big enough to work. They used pickaxes. The wood snapped in the cold. You pass the graveyard often. It's just a patch of land on the hill, crooked crosses sticking out of the snow like broken teeth. Some graves are marked with stones, others with nothing at all. If you die during a plague, they don't always bury you properly. Sometimes they just pile you, cover you with snow, let nature handle the rest. And plagues don't sleep through winter. People used to think they did, but not anymore. There's a sickness now, something that starts with coughing and ends with silence. You've seen 3 people go this week. One was the midwife. Another was a traveler who collapsed in the square, bleeding from the nose. No one went near him, just watched. He died where he fell. The priest said it's God's will. The healer said it's the bad air. Your neighbor said it's because the wolves are too close. You don't know who's right, but you've started sleeping with a cloth over your face just in case. Historians still debate whether the Black Death came in waves or whether smaller plagues simply never left. You're not a historian. You're a peasant with a cold and a friend who hasn't woken up in 2 days. You stop by his house. They haven't taken the body out yet. The family is still saying goodbye. That usually means they're afraid to move him. You peer in the window. He's lying on the bed, skin pale, mouth open. The candle beside him has burned all the way down. The wax pooled on the table like tears. Later, someone will carry him to the graveyard. Maybe they'll wrap him. Maybe not. Maybe he'll get a prayer, or just a hurried blessing and a shove into the half-frozen pit. You don't say goodbye. You don't know what to say. You walk home with your scarf pulled high over your nose even though it's wet and stiff with old breath. You scrub your hands with snow. You sit by the fire not too close, and you wait for the coughing to stop. The sound you wake up to is strange, not a howl, not a cough, not the whistle of wind. It's silence, not the comforting kind. Not the kind where everything is still and safe. No. This silence is the kind where you know something is wrong. You sit up, blink, and notice the smell first. Acrid, damp, a little sweet in a sick way. You throw off the blanket and rush to the barn. Inside it's chaos, or rather it was. Now it's still. The cow is dead. She was your last one. The others were sold or starved long ago. But this one, she was strong. Your mother even named her Annie's. You'd fed her by hand the past week, mixed in the last of the grain, brushed her back with a bundle of straw. And still she's lying there now, eyes glassy, legs twisted like she tried to stand and failed. You touch her side, cold. There's no sign of injury, no blood, just collapse. Your father mutters it must have been sickness, or maybe the cold finally reached her bones. Your mother doesn't say a word. She just stands there wringing her apron until her knuckles turn white. This is more than a dead animal. This is a disaster. The cow was everything. Milk, manure for warmth, the promise of a calf in spring, and if things got truly desperate, meat. But now she's just a frozen carcass taking up space in a barn that no longer has a purpose. You try to lift her, not to save her, just to move her out of the way. She's heavier than you remember, like the cold soaked into her flesh and made it stone. You struggle, then stop. It's no use. You glance up and see your father watching you. He doesn't offer help. He just walks back into the house, slow, quiet, like he's carrying 100 winters on his shoulders. Historians still debate how much livestock loss impacted medieval economies in the short term. You don't need to debate it. You feel it. In your stomach. In your future. In the silence of your parents' eyes. The question now becomes, what do you do with her? You can't bury her. The ground's too hard. You can't leave her out. The wolves will come. So you do what people do when they're desperate and cold and alone. You butcher her. It's not pretty. It's not sacred. It's just survival. You do it with a dull knife and a heavy heart hacking through frozen flesh like you're sawing wood. You cry, not loudly, not in a way anyone would notice, just enough that your breath catches sometimes. You save what you can. Meat hide bone. You string up the cuts outside, hoping they'll freeze before they rot. Your mother starts a stew. She doesn't say what's in it. She doesn't have to. Your little brother refuses to eat it first. Says it tastes like wrong. Your father tells him to be grateful. Your mother just stares into her bowl. You go to bed with full bellies and empty hearts. Annis is gone, and winter is nowhere near over. Your hands no longer do what you ask them to. They used to obey without question. Grip a broom, tie a knot, pluck a splinter. Now it takes effort to close your fingers all the way. When you try to bend them, the joints crackle. Sometimes they don't bend at all. Other times they lock up halfway through a task and won't let go like they're staging a rebellion. You rub them constantly, against your sleeves, against your thighs, against each other until the friction burns. Nothing helps. Not really. Your mother swears by hot stones. She wraps them in cloth and presses them to your palms, murmuring something that might be a prayer or just her way of pretending this isn't getting worse. You still have chores. Pain doesn't grant immunity. You feed what animals are left. You fetch what water hasn't frozen. You help your father patch the roof again, even though every nail you drive feels like you're driving it through your own hand. Your fingers swell, then they shrink. Then they split. Red lines open across your knuckles like little mouths. They bleed if you're not careful, and you're never careful enough, and the work never ends. Today, you're tasked with hauling firewood, what little there is. Twigs mostly, half-burnt scraps from a collapsed shed. You use a rope to drag them back across the snow. It digs into your palms like wire. By the time you reach the cottage, you can't feel your fingertips. That would be a blessing, except you can feel them. You feel everything. The ache, the burn, the horrible tightness of skin stretched too thin. You stick your hands out to the fire. Too fast, too close. The heat stabs you. You yank back, blinking hard. Pain means they're still alive. That's supposed to be good. Supposed to be. Historians still debate whether medieval workers developed permanent damage from winter labor. You'd argue yes. You'd show them your hands, if they could understand. The blacksmith's apprentice has it worse. You saw his hands last week wrapped in linen stiff as paddles. His thumb is going dark. He hasn't worked in days. People whisper it might be rot. He hasn't been outside since. You see your future in his fingers. At night, you sleep with your hands tucked into your armpits like a child cradling secrets. You whisper to them, "Stay alive." Just a few more weeks. You dream of warmth, not the fire, the sun. The kind of warmth that melts ice without asking. The kind that kisses your skin instead of punishing it. In the morning, your fingers move. Not well, but enough. You go outside. The wind greets you with a slap, and still you work. The winter of 1315 isn't just bad. It's legendary. It starts with rain, strange soaking rain in late spring that never stops. By the time autumn arrives, the fields are swamps, and the grain is black with rot. The harvest fails, and then the real nightmare begins. Now it's deep winter. You're not in your usual lean season. You're in the middle of the Great Famine. Everyone is. All across Europe, the stories are the same. Crops died. Livestock drowned. Roads collapsed. Salted meat ran out. The world, it seems, just stopped working. You didn't think it could get worse, and then it does. The snow starts early and falls heavy. The wind never stops howling. You run out of bread. You run out of roots. You run out of ideas. Your family eats everything edible: boiled leather, tree bark, spoiled milk. Someone tries to cook a belt. It doesn't work. Your uncle rides out to another village for help. He doesn't come back. Your neighbors dig up old graves. No one talks about it. No one wants to believe it. But you know, the silence, the smell, it lingers. You wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of chewing. You find your brother gnawing on a candle. He looks at you ashamed and puts it down like he's just realized what he's doing. He's 7. People go missing. Quietly. A man who used to sit by the chapel every day, gone. The widow with the red shawl vanished. It's not wolves. It's not sickness. It's hunger. You can feel it in the way people look at each other. Like everyone's made of meat now. The church calls for more fasting. The irony is unbearable. You're already fasting. Fasting from food, from comfort, from hope. You wonder if God fasted before he gave up on the world. Your father gets quieter. Your mother gets thinner. Your sister hides food under the floorboards, crumbs really, and guards them like treasure. You don't blame her. Historians still debate what caused the Great Famine. Some say it was climate. Some say politics. Some say sin. But no one debates what it felt like. Not if they lived it. You spend most of your days lying still. Moving takes too much energy. You feel your ribs when you breathe. You feel your skull pressing against your skin. And still life stumbles on. One day the sky clears. It's the first time in weeks. The sun comes out pale and shy. You step outside and just stand in it. You close your eyes. It's not warm, but it's light, and that means something. You're not sure whose idea it was to sleep all together, but by now it's just what people do, not for fun. Not for stories by the fire or sibling bonding. No, this is something more ancient, more desperate. Body heat becomes the only source of life that doesn't burn wood or cost food. Tonight, there are 6 of you crammed into one bed, your 2 brothers, your mother, your cousin, and old Aunt Marta, who snores like a saw, but she's warm and that's all that matters. You lie in the middle. The worst place, really. Too many elbows, not enough blanket. But it's better than the edges. The edges are cold. The edges are where toes go numb and fingers don't come back. No one speaks, not because you're asleep, because you're saving breath. Aunt Marta coughs in her sleep. Wet, shallow, bad. Your mother feels her forehead with the back of her hand. She doesn't say anything, but you know what that look means. In the morning, Marta doesn't wake up. At first you think she's just sleeping deep. You shake her shoulder gently, then a little harder. Her mouth is open. Her eyes are half-lidded. Your brother turns away and presses his face into the straw. You slept beside the dead. All night. You don't know how to react. You want to scream, but there's no energy. No point. You just get up. Slowly. Quietly. You don't want to disturb her even though she's already gone. Your father helps you lift her. She's light. Too light. Like her spirit left weeks ago and only now remembered to take the body with it. You wrap her in a blanket. The good one. The one she used to knit under the one that smells like lavender and smoke. No one argues. The ground is too frozen to dig, so you place her outside on a bier covered in pine branches. The snow will keep her until spring. That's what you tell yourselves. Until spring. The bed feels colder that night. Not because she's gone, because the space she took up is gone. And that space kept someone else warm. That space might have been the difference. Historians still debate the mortality rates of the harshest winters. You've stopped counting. You just know that your world keeps shrinking. One by one, breath by breath, bed space by bed space, your cousin moves closer. No one objects. You're all afraid to sleep, and more afraid to sleep alone. The sun rises earlier now. Not much, but enough to notice. Enough that when you step outside in the morning, the sky has hints of color instead of the usual iron gray. A pale gold streak here, a blue smudge there. It doesn't mean the cold is gone, but it means it might go someday soon. You try not to get your hopes up, because spring isn't a promise. You've learned that lesson too many times. You've seen thaws come early only to freeze again harder. You've watched the first shoots of green shrivel beneath a sudden frost. You've heard rumors of warm winds from the south, and then woke to snow so thick the doors wouldn't open. Today, the snow crunches differently. It's softer, wetter. Slush clings to your boots as you haul water from the well, still half frozen, but not solid anymore. You notice a patch of earth poking through near the barn, brown and sad, but visible. You stare at it for a long time. Dirt feels like a miracle, and yet, not everyone has made it this far. 3 more families are gone. 1 packed up their cart and left in the night. No one knows where. 1 buried their last child and stopped answering the door. 1 simply vanished. The wind took them, people say. Or the wolves. Or their own despair. Your family is still here. Barely. Your mother is smaller now. Her eyes hollow, her hair more gray than brown. Your father has taken to sitting outside in the sun when he can find it not to warm up, but just to remember what light feels like. Your brother coughs less, though his ribs still stick out too far. You help repair the roof. Again. You fix the coop check, the traps mend the fence. You don't want to. You don't feel like doing anything. But movement is how you stop from falling apart. You pass the old burial ground and count the mounds. There are more than last year. You know them all. Everyone. There's a small wooden cross marked only with a flower carved in it. That's Ellen's. You place a pebble at its base. It's all you have to give. Historians still debate whether peasant communities could truly recover after brutal winters. Some say the social fabric held strong. Others believe everything unraveled thread by thread. You think it's both. You see people help each other and you see people hoard and hide. You see a neighbor give you half a loaf and another neighbor pretend not to hear your knock. Trust comes back slower than the sun. Later you find a tiny green shoot near the edge of the field. You stare at it like it's some kind of joke. A plant. Growing now. Like it doesn't know what this land has been through. You don't tell anyone. You just check on it every day, quietly, as if it might spook and disappear. You're not proud of what you're about to do, but pride doesn't fill your stomach. There's an old leather satchel under your bed, dry cracked, the strap long broken. Inside, hidden beneath a cloth that still smells faintly of mold and wax, is your family's last secret. A handful of dried roots, a few shriveled berries, a single strip of meat black with age and so tough it might as well be wood. You don't ask where it came from. You don't ask what it came from. You just eat it. You chew slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because your jaw's forgotten how to handle real food. It hurts. But the hurt feels alive, and that's something. Your sister watches you from the hearth blank-eyed. You break the strip in half and offer it to her. She takes it without a word. This is what hunger looks like after too long quiet. Not desperation, not pleading, just a kind of dull mechanical survival. The fire's gone from your limbs, but the instinct eat live move remains. Later that day, the neighbors call a gathering. No feast, no festival, just a desperate exchange of what do you have left, bread baked with straw. Soup made from boiled bones and wild weeds. A child gnawing on a lump of tree bark like it's candy. A man boiling a shoe. Yes, a shoe, leather soaked and scraped and simmered until it turns into something chewable. Not tasty, not nutritious, just chewable. You're told to avoid the sole's too much dirt. You try some. It's like eating regret. Historians still debate whether medieval famine drove people to cannibalism. The records are vague. The stories are not. You've heard them whispered. During the Great Famine, they say one village hanged a man for murder and found human bones in his stew pot. No one asked where the meat came from after that. They just stopped looking. You've never reached that point, but the idea of it doesn't shock you anymore. And that in itself is terrifying. Tonight, someone trades a pair of socks for a rat. No, really. The man catches it behind the chapel, holds it by the tail, swinging like a prize. It's thin and terrified, and still very much alive. He trades it for wool socks and a kiss on the cheek. Later, the smell of roasting rat wafts through the village, and no one dares judge. You tell yourself you wouldn't do the same, but you don't sound convincing. Back at home, you find your mother scraping the bottom of a pot. She lifts the spoon to her lips, then pauses and hands it to you instead. You want to argue, but you're too tired. You sip. It tastes like dust and iron, and still it's everything. You go to bed that night with the vague ache of something in your belly. Not fullness, but not pure emptiness either. It feels almost foreign. You dream of meat pies. Then you wake to your brother chewing the edge of a blanket. You don't stop him. You just roll over and whisper, "Spring is coming," because you have to say something. The thaw comes slow. Not dramatic, not with trumpets and birdsong like in the stories. Just small changes. A drip from the eaves. The snow losing its shine. The smell of mud returning to the air. A thick, sweet rot that somehow feels like hope. You wake to birdsong. Real birdsong. A single bird perched on the ash tree outside your cottage, chirping like it owns the whole world. You sit up too fast, dizzy from hunger, from disbelief. You haven't heard that sound in months. You go outside barefoot, don't even notice until the mud seeps between your toes. It's warm. Warm. The sun is out, not bright, not bold, but there. You tilt your face to it and close your eyes. It doesn't burn, it soothes. You're still hungry. You're still tired. Your fingers still ache when you move them. But for the first time in months, you feel something shift inside you. Not just relief, something deeper. Survival. The village is quieter these days, not because of the snow, but because of the empty houses. So many never made it. The Reeve died. So did old Rannoch and the widow in the red shawl, and the family in the north end whose door never reopened. But you did. Your family did. Your father plants the first seeds today, cold hardy barley, some sprouting onions. Your mother hums a tune while sweeping ashes out of the hearth. Your brother runs a few steps without coughing. You almost smile. Historians still debate whether people in the Middle Ages marked the end of winter with festivals or just went straight back to work. You think it's probably both. Joy and labor. Celebration and exhaustion. Hope sewn together with fear. There's still no food in the pantry, but you spot green shoots near the compost pile. Nettles, bitter but edible. You gather them with bare hands. They sting, You don't care. You're alive. You boil the greens into a soup so thin it's practically a memory of food. But your mother ladles it into every bowl and says it tastes like spring. She's right. At night, you don't sleep next to 5 other bodies anymore. It's warmer now. The fire burns low. The candle burns longer. You look out the window, just a hole covered in oiled parchment, and see the stars for the first time in weeks. They're still there. You made it. Somehow through the cold, the hunger, the dark, the silence, the fear. You lived. Not because you were strong, not because you were smart, but because sometimes surviving is just holding on long enough to see the ice melt. And now you do. You press your fingers into the dirt the next morning. It's still damp, still reluctant. But it accepts the seed. And so do you. Word count 1073. Closing 300 words. So here you are at the edge of winter's shadow, staring into the first soft breaths of spring. The world around you is still bruised. The ground is scarred with frostbite and footprints that led nowhere. The people who once filled the air with laughter arguments, stories, they're not all here anymore. But you are. The season tried to break you. It nearly did. It stripped you bare of comfort, of dignity, of certainty. It made you question everything, your body, your faith, your neighbors. Even the sky seemed colder, the stars more distant. And yet you endured, not with grand declarations or heroic triumphs. You didn't conquer winter. You survived it. Day by day, spoonful by spoonful, step by frozen step. And as the snow melts, so does something inside you. The tightness loosens, the silence softens. You begin to believe hesitantly, cautiously, that things will grow again. That your life isn't just a waiting room for suffering. That warmth is not a myth, but a memory returning slowly. Like a friend who almost forgot the way back. So you turn your face to the wind, not to shield yourself, but to feel it. You open the door without flinching. You plant something and expect it to live. And that perhaps is the most miraculous part of all. Good night. End of script. Good night.